And we're back. Welcome back to the Aliens and Angels podcast. Since the beginning of 2025, I started off the new year with chapters 1, 2, and 3 of my new book called Transdimensional Meet the New Neighbors. Please do go back and watch the replays to catch up. Today we will continue to read and discuss part 2, chapter 4, What is ET Like? And for those of you who have already purchased your copy, feel free to follow along and add your comments and ask me questions arising from the content. If you do not own your own copy, the links for both Kindle and paperback versions are featured below in the description. All of my links are featured below, including where you can find my book on Amazon. Thanks for liking, commenting, subscribing, and please do share my content with your friends. And I'm also very happy to announce that channel memberships are now available so you can help to support my work and also receive my perks. So, so today we're going to continue in the book. This is the proof copy. When you order it from Amazon, it won't have this band that says not for resale across the top. And so if you want to follow along, you can pick up the book on Amazon. And I'm happy to announce that as of today, I have now published Transdimensional number 2, Meet the Greys picture book. So the first 2 chapters include text, including firsthand accounts from other people and myself who have had some experience with the Greys, but some of the people that I've featured have had extensive contact with the Greys. And this is a little different because it's a picture book. So it has all kinds of pictures. Now, this proof has my pictures featured in color. But then I found out that it was going to cost me at least, a horrendous amount to publish it, because I also have to pay for each book that gets printed in color. And so I decided that I would actually, here's some images of some hybrid children. So I decided that since they were Greys anyway, and they have very little skin tone, I thought that I would go ahead and just publish it in black and white. Now, if I get a lot of orders and if people really, really like the picture book concept, then I will think about bringing out a color copy. But I wanted to keep the price down as much as possible so that everybody could afford to buy it and have it. And the purpose of this book is not to be a definitive guide on what ET or the Greys look like, but more to get us used to humanoids that don't look exactly like us, because I believe the time is coming very, very soon when we are going to start seeing these beings firsthand. And if we have a good idea of approximately what they're going to look like, these are not actual photographs, they're AI generated. I basically directed AI and it did it for me. Much better job than I could do for myself. But if we get used to these beings and approximations of what they look like, then when they start showing up around the earth, we could just go, oh, that's just the Greys. Because you'll have an understanding of what they're about, what their purposes are, why they're here from the first 2 chapters of the book. And then after looking through all the beautiful images, you will get an idea. And then it's not going to have the same shock value which is why I produced it. So that book is going to be available on Amazon in a couple of days. And then, of course, it'll be followed in the next couple of weeks by the Kindle version. And eventually, I want to have both books. Well, actually, not the picture book because it's a picture book, but the first book, I'm going to also have it have a voice actor read it, and so it'll be really professionally done, and then have it on Audible so you can pick it up there. So that's what's up and coming. And I'm also thinking of making some PDFs, full color PDFs available on my website that people can pick up for a very low price if they want to have all the images. Because even the first book at the back and throughout, well, I don't know if you can see this, has all kinds of images, whoops, of my experiences. And but they'll be in full color and available on my website. So that's coming as well. So that is all the news I have. So I guess I'll just carry on by reading Chapter 4, What is ET Like? And this starts, for those of you who are following along, on page 64. So it starts off with not so different from ourselves. Just going to move my mic a little closer here. There. It is a shame that most people here on Earth think of ETs as either hideous monsters or as white people with long blonde hair. In my experience, these images couldn't be farther from the truth. Although my ET friends come from diverse backgrounds, each race has much variation similar to the human race. Even amongst beings from the same ancestry with similar genetic codes, there is much diversity in the sizes and shapes of their eyes, noses, and ears, their height and weight, their skin tones, hair color, and distribution. Yet they do not look very different from the people of Earth because we are all of the same species. Oh, hello. Nice to see you. Tomorrow, kiddo, watching from Australia. Thank you for sharing your experience. I bought your book through Kindle. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I don't know if you caught the very beginning of the show, but my new book, I just published it today. It won't have the band across the front when you buy it. It's called Transdimensional Number 2, Meet the Greys Picture Book. So if you missed the beginning of the show, you might want to watch the replay to catch the very beginning where I show you what that's going to be all about. So today I'm reading from page 64. So thank you for joining us. I know you're on the other side of the world, so I'm thinking it might even be the middle of the night where you are, or even the next day, nighttime, not sure. I did, thanks. Yes, been getting that too. But there we go. Tomorrow, kiddo. I did, thanks. Yes, we'll be getting that too. Wonderful. So as I mentioned, the proof that I showed is in color, but the actual book will be in black and white. But we're dealing with the grays, and the grays don't have the pigment that reflect light in our visible range of the color spectrum. So they all appear basically gray anyway. So you're not missing out on very much, and it really helped keep the cost down. So the book, if I had done it in color, would have been over $35 American, and now it's $18.99 American. So I think that will help quite a bit. Just clicked over 6 a.m. The sun is just coming up. Well, good morning, and thank you again for joining us. So continue on page 64. Further, these beings are just ahead of humans in their developmental process. They are at our next stage of advancement. They look a lot like us, but they're healthier, more intelligent, much better emotionally adjusted, are endowed with courage, integrity, and a higher level of spirituality, but not that far ahead of us. Also, they are in every way more telepathically and technologically advanced. Here is what I learned while visiting the big ship. Most ETs are taller than the average human, but some are not. These are our spiritual brothers and sisters and our distant physical cousins. They appear very much like the human diversity we see here on Earth because, intergalactically speaking, we are all members of the same species, just different family lines or races. For example, all people born on Earth are of the human race. We look all kinds different, even within the same blood relative family, we have great diversity. Well, the same is true for ET. I also learned that the one big difference from us is that they live for much longer, 500 of our Earth years or even older. As I explained in the previous chapter, reproduction generally occurs during the first 100 years, but they live for at least 500 years. And once they are past their reproductive age, they have a shift in consciousness and become learned scholars, teachers, and mentors. This is why all ETs, regardless of age, have a deep respect and an attitude of awe for the elders. Although I experienced them in many of their variations, I discovered that all ET races breathe oxygenated air, eat food, and sleep, but each has slightly different environmental and cyclic or rhythmic requirements. The only exceptions to this that I observed were the aquatics, which I initially saw once in a huge contained habitat aboard the big ship. But later, I had an amazing personal experience with one of them. Aquatics, as I call them, are not actually aquatic because the fluid environment that they live in has the same oxygen content as our atmosphere and is not made up of an H2O medium. Many gas-breathing humanoids, like humans, can actually live for short periods of time in their liquid environment because our lungs can act as gills. But the lungs of these beings are definitely gill-like, and they live their whole lives in this fluid environment. I was able to spend a short period of time in their watery habitat and will tell you more about this in a later chapter. For now, I will tell you that aquatics are tall beings with very smooth, foggy blue colored skin, which has a similar texture to our marine mammals. So just like dolphins and whales, you know how they have that kind of shiny, smooth skin texture? Same thing for these beings. They have vertical slit-shaped nostrils on their faces instead of protruding noses, and gill vents behind both small ears. Their mouths are shaped like and are about the same size as ours, but their teeth are smaller, more pointed, and are all the same size and shape. These beings are very handsome and attractive, are bald and slight of build. Their feet are flatter than ours. They have webbed toes and fingers, and they use their feet and lower legs for general propulsion. They do not walk. To move about, they spread their legs, raise and bend their knees, and move their calves and feet in a circular manner. And when they use both arms and legs in a synchronized motion, they are able to swim very quickly. They wore no clothes, and I found it difficult to distinguish gender because they were all about the same size and they have internal genitalia. I also met short beings with beards on round faces who were barely 5 feet tall. They had hazel-colored eyes and light brown skin. These ones do everything in bonded pairs because they love to maintain physical contact with each other and maintain emotionally close and intimate all of the time. The females have an obvious bust, more facial hair than the males, and they remind me of characters from a book by Dr. Seuss because their heads are topped with bright red, spiky hair. So when I first met this one couple, I found it difficult to remember who was the female and who was the male because actually the female looks more male and the male looks more female. But underneath their clothes, of course, they're definitely gendered. And they actually can't, this particular race of ETs, they actually can't exist. One of them will die if they don't have constant intimate contact. And when I say intimate, it's not necessarily sexual. It's just they're always kind of holding hands, arm in arm, um, and they're very linked to each other in a very, very intimate way. And they're like that their whole lives. I have more information about them further on in the book too. One such couple, who I call the twins. I have twins in quotation marks because they're not twins. They're not even from the same family. But they look so much alike. I just gave them the nickname of the twins. And they were very curious about me, and I asked my buddy to introduce them to me. More about my buddy in the chapter called Orientation. I liked them right away, and I got to know them fairly well because they sort of adopted me into their fictitious family. I loved their comical faces, their warm affection, and the way they would reach out and gently touch me as we shared time and consciousness together. I came to love them very much because of how gentle and loving that they are. In addition, I found that some humanoid beings have adaptations that we do not see here on Earth. As I mentioned, the aquatics breathe fluid, and some other beings have interesting, unique variations. For example, when I was visiting a planet while participating in the pre settlement research, one of my comrades had the exceptional ability of being able to see much farther than the rest of us. He had a second lens that flipped over his eyeballs when he focused on something at a distance. This inborn mechanism was focus related and quickly flipped up and out of the way when he drew his attention to things that were close by. Some other races look much like us, but they have dark variegated pigment on their bodies, and I noticed they wore clothing that exposed many of their various blotches and spots. Apparently, they can emphasize and darken their pigment for private or short distance communication. These unique pigment constellations allow them to communicate much the same way as American Sign Language allows deaf people to communicate. More often, though, these unique beings use their pigment patterns to emphasize their telepathic communication, similar to the way that we make use of gestures. Overall, there seemed to be infinite variety in bodily appearances. I found much diversity amongst these ET beings because most are of mixed race, and I learned that their ancestors came from numerous solar systems, star clusters, and galaxies. In many cases, this mixing has been going on for thousands of years. They have no concept for racism, and as further explained later in this book, all forms of love and reproduction are celebrated. Skin color variations include all tones and shades of brown, off-white, cream or pink, pale blues, and even orange. But by far the most common skin tone was many tints of brown, very similar to here on Earth. Um, I want to also announce that on the Quantum Guide Show on Wednesday, which is at noon Pacific, 1 p.m. Mountain, or 3 p.m. Eastern Time, I'm actually going to do a full color slideshow. And I'm going to go through all the images from this book and a few images from my new book, Meet the Greys picture book. And I think you'll find it really interesting. So on Aliens and Angels, I'm actually reading, and the content is very auditory and not much to see visually. But on Wednesday, I'm going to be doing the slideshow presentation so that you'll get a really good impact, full color, large images of the different kinds of beings that I met aboard the big ship. So you might enjoy that. So if you're not going to be home, you may want to record it, or I guess you could always watch the replay. And for those of you on audio, you'll definitely want to catch the replay to see the images. Um, so I also learned that some beings could cloak their appearance in a similar way as chameleons or octopods do here on Earth. They have sensors in their skin that allow them to mimic their immediate environment. They prefer to wear bright colored printed fabrics for clothing, and you can always see a hint of the same pattern on their skin. These are very playful beings with a tradition of complex games similar to our hide and seek play. But here on the big ship, I saw no evidence of deception. Since we all communicate telepathically, we always know when they are present, and besides, their bright choices of clothing make them quite visible. So, I just wanted to add that later on in the book, I talk a little bit about recreation, sports, things like that. I attended one, I don't know, I guess you could call it a sport event, but it was almost like a show or I'm not sure what you'd call it. But anyway, these beings that have this chameleon ability, they were able to, within an area with all kinds of patterns and shapes and geometric shapes and stuff, they were able to hide themselves, embed themselves so that we couldn't see them. We wouldn't even know they were there. But the other thing is because they're telepathic, they had to keep they were very disciplined and they had to keep their telepathic thoughts, whatever you want to call it, to themselves because otherwise we would have known right away where they were, right? So these are extremely disciplined beings. And instead of using it for like military stealth operations or anything like that, they just use it for like games. So we would try to find them. And it was really, really quite a lot of fun. And I really enjoyed it. So on page 67, I'll continue. As I mentioned previously, some beings are physically shorter, but most beings are taller than us with larger frames and with wider feet and hands. Proportionally, many have slightly larger heads than humans, and most have larger eyes. Some beings have more hair, usually straight or curly, while others remove their hair or do not have much hair at all, and their body hair distribution does not always align with our concept of gender. Some, like the aquatics, were completely bald from head to toe. And to add to the variety, all beings have their own preference of hair and grooming style and fashion. So there's quite a few beings that will just remove all their body hair, even though they have it. And some take great pride in having body hair. It, there is no judgment on how we present aboard the big ship. So there's a lot of variety. And yes, ET does care about fashion, some more than others. Next, I have to tell you about what I call the angelics, who look like perfect, beautiful, godlike beings to me, with a towering height of at least 10 feet tall. They reminded me of the images of the ancient Assyrian kings, with very large, stocky, muscular frames and long, dark, curly hair with red beards that fell in tight ringlets, but their skin tones were among the palest of the beings that I met. I do not recall seeing any of their females, so I cannot report on their appearance. There were only a few males that I saw, and socially they kept to themselves. Since we all communicate telepathically, I could not hide my fascination with them, and although I stared openly, they were very patient with me and did not make an issue of it. It was obvious that I meant no harm. So, yeah, I mean, especially in the beginning, before I learned how to become proficient in telepathy, I was like gawking and, you know, staring, being kind of rude. But they're a very very empathetic, very loving community, and nobody made issue of it. And eventually I was able to keep my thoughts to myself. We'll get into that a little further in the book as well. All of the beings that I saw looked very much like us, and as I mentioned earlier, they are our slightly more evolved brothers, sisters, and distant cousins. Some were androgynous looking, and others were more obviously gendered. Some preferred more clothing, and others less. Even within groups who shared similar appearance, there was great diversity of personality, temperament, talent, and preferences. However, one thing they all seemed to have in common was that these beings live in close knit fictitious or genetic family groups, and they prefer to spend a lot of time with their offspring and their relatives. Oh, hi, Tony Ann. Tony Ann's just joined us. Hi, nice to see you. I'm just reading from chapter 4 today. Um, I'm on page 67 if you want to follow along in your own book. Um, and all were what we would consider to be fit and beautiful with symmetrical faces. Most ETs had long arms and legs with very fit torsos. At first, it was a chore not to stare at them rudely. Further, while on board, beings rarely work at physical fitness, and they have healing pods to improve and maintain health. If not for seeing them for myself, I could never have imagined the level of health they possess. And I realize that here on Earth, we are very sickly and weak in comparison. Yeah, it was a big shock, when I would come back from being on the big ship. I go out and do my shopping, just look around at humanity and go, oh my God, what has happened to us? Most people look very sickly in comparison. One more, excuse me. One more important difference between humans and ET, they do not age the way humans do. They never get sick or decrepit. They do not lose their minds or their memories, and they remain perfectly healthy and lucid until they reach a point when they choose to move on to the next phase of life, which we call death. Elders who no longer wish to remain on this plane of reality choose a day and time to leave their mortal shell, and this day is joyfully celebrated by all. By this time, they are all sufficiently advanced to make the journey home peacefully and without any assistance or medical intervention. So we think we're born, and that's when we come into existence, and then we die, and then we don't exist anymore. No, no, ET does not subscribe to that. Many philosophies, even here on Earth, do not subscribe to that. The greater reality is we go through all kinds of transitions into other dimensional realities besides the 3D here on Earth. So, what we would consider death for them is just moving on to a different dimensional reality. And since they're all very telepathic and very intuitive, chances are they can even somehow stay in contact. All life is respected, and I am hoping that by now you understand that there's nothing to be afraid of. Earth people can be cruel and without a moral compass, but not our ET distant relatives. Also, these are not the only beings out there. I have been told this is just the tip of the intergalactic community. Finally, besides the fully corporeal beings, sometimes visiting ETs are present via bilocation, but other times they use clones for their transfer of consciousness when they, as visitors, require temporary physicality but cannot actually be there physically. And as you will learn in a later chapter, there are 3 kinds of clones. I call them clones. I have no idea what they're made out of. I don't know if they're printed or what. It's just what I call them. So there's generic, which is one size fits all, and they all basically look the same. Then there's the genetic copy, and then there's the utilitarian. One day, I saw a group of a half dozen or so generic clone beings touring the big ship, and I noticed that although they were identical, there was variety in the way they held their posture, walked, gestured, and showed facial expression. They were all sort of a gray color because they have no need for skin pigment and are about 5.5 feet tall. They're completely hairless and they have large dark eyes that look completely black. As I experienced from using a generic clone body myself once or twice for temporary access to the big ship, the eyes are black to accommodate the light sensitivity that many beings experience during consciousness transfer, and the tight jumpsuit-like garments are simply shrink-wrapped onto them. So a lot of people would look at these clone bodies and go, oh, those are grays. They do. They look like stereotypical grays. except they're probably taller, like 5.5 feet tall. We think of greys as being little people. But as you'll learn from my second book, greys are actually between 3 feet and 8 or 9 feet tall, depending on the race. But anyway, they basically just have this sort of shrink wrapped bodysuit that they wear on these clone bodies because there's no need. They're not in them for very long. Visitor beings usually only occupy the clone bodies for a few hours or for 1 or 2 day awake and sleep cycles, so there's no need for them to wear popular clothes or even eat while aboard the big ship. This is why their ears, noses, and mouths appear to be underdeveloped, and they look more like what we would consider to be stereotypical greys in appearance. I never asked what happens to their clone bodies once the beings withdraw their consciousness from them, because I didn't want to know, and I don't have any knowledge of how they were created in the first place. So, yeah, I did think about it. What happens to the clone bodies when the beings go back, to their planet or dimension of origin and no longer need them? And it kind of creeped me out, to be honest with you. I don't know. I just didn't want to know. I just didn't want to know. I wasn't comfortable with it, so I didn't want to know. Finally, you can imagine my amusement when I realized that to my ET friends on the big ship, I'm also considered to be an alien. I wear the label with pride. So I thought that was kind of funny, because we think of all these humanoids as being aliens, but we never think that to them, we're the aliens, we're the odd looking characters. I thought that was kind of interesting. Okay, so before I continue, I'm on page 69, telepathic communication. I'm going to just quickly play a 2-minute promo for my book for those of you who aren't familiar. Then we'll come right back and we'll continue on. Transdimensional, meet the new neighbors. Check out my new book available from Amazon bookstores worldwide and read the stunning details about ET diversity and culture, along with their advanced ways of living and expressing spirituality, which is in no way like anything imagined here on Earth. Transdimensional, Meet the New Neighbors introduces you to many different ET beings, the healing pods, the interior of the big ship, my orientation process, cultural events, and off-world mating practices. When I tucked myself into bed for the night back in 2014, I had no idea that I would be transported to the big ship, meet many different extraterrestrial races of beings, become well acquainted with their culture, and visit numerous interesting worlds. While away, I learned a great deal about the big ship, intergalactic and transdimensional travel, intergalactic planetary research, and the various options for resettlement. My true life adventures continued night after night, and I had never experienced anything like this before. The first few times that I awoke back at home, I convinced myself that it had all been some kind of a fantastic dream. But while away, I was eating, sleeping, learning, and visiting, all the while experiencing what I perceived as days, weeks, and months. I am so happy to present you with my true, nonfiction account of my weird little life and the more important messages from beyond our realm that I have been tasked to share with all of you. It is my hope and sincere desire that I will inspire you to acknowledge your own transdimensional abilities and experiences so that together we can become the change we wish to see in our world. Paperback and Kindle editions are now available at all Amazon bookstores. Go to the Amazon website, select the bookstore or Kindle store, and enter Transdimensional, Meet the New Neighbors by Karen Holton. The Audible version is coming out soon. Yes, it is. And I want to thank everybody out there, whether you're here in the live chat, watching the replay, or listening on an audio platform. I want to thank you for purchasing my book. I really appreciate it because I didn't write the book for myself. It's a message for all of humanity. I think it's very relevant and very important that we sort of get a grounding on what ET could be like. At least these are the ETs that I've had experiences with. We all hear the scary stories, But, it's good for us to also hear about positive contact. And I'm wondering if you would all do me a favor and go back to the Amazon website where you bought the book, and please do give me a review. A lot of people are telling me, Karen, I go to Amazon and I type in the name of the book, I type in your name, and nothing's coming up. And they're having a tough time finding my book. So I know that when I get a certain amount of reviews, they will then start, I don't know, expand the algorithm and make it much easier for other people to find my book and now my second book, which will be out in a few days. So if you could go back and leave me a review, I would really, really appreciate it. That's something you can really do to help not just me, but other people who will want to get access to this information as well. So I'm going to read a little bit about telepathic communication on page 69. In all exopolitical endeavors and visits to the big ship, we did not hold conversation as we think of it. These beings have the ability to run thought privately or publicly and can involve just a select few when desired. Body language can be an indicator of a topic needing sharing. We always ask the other beings if we can share common or group or private conversations before we attempt a telepathic communication. This is like a psychic handshake, which also sets up personal and collective boundaries. So basically, you don't just start projecting for other people to pick up your communication the way we would do with verbal speech. We just start talking or shout out or interrupt. They don't do that. Basically, they just sort of, your body language indicates that you want to be involved. And then they open up the channel and you do kind of like a psychic handshake. I can't really explain it. It's more of a feeling than a procedure. And once that is initiated, then you're welcomed. And that's sort of part of the manners of using telepathy that you don't often hear about. And then again, like I said, you have to keep your thoughts private. You're not going to be blabbing all over everything the way we do here on Earth. So just a heads up for you folks who are hoping to have ET contact in the future. In addition, I found it to be very interesting that adults have the ability to telepathically shield their young from communication to and from others, with the intention of forming protective boundaries until the children are mature enough to do so for themselves. Their young are always guarded, secured, and sheltered beyond what is the custom here on Earth. Yeah, you never find little ones going off and playing amongst themselves somewhere. Not going to happen. They're always being supervised and cared for. Very important in ET culture. Once we're welcomed into a conversation, then we share imaginings, like running short, shared videos within the mind's eye, along with emotions, symbols, and body sensations. Without exception, we all communicate on a telepathic level. There is no verbal speech. Communication is done by feeling, emoting, and imagining. Some gesturing is common, and some beings gesture more than others, and some emit little noises for emphasis, but mostly communication is inaudible. So this makes sense when you think about it. Beings from many different worlds, from many different dimensional realities, because it's telepathy and the method of telepathy, which is not in English, they're able to communicate. So it makes sense. And a lot of people don't realize that our imagination is actually a technology. It's a portal. It's a system that we can gain mastery over for communication, also time travel, also interdimensional travel. And it's been extremely downplayed and hindered in our three-dimensional reality, but that's all opening up now, and which is a good thing, I think. However, I did notice that they often laugh out loud. They make noises when they cry. And as you learned from reading more about my personal adventures to other worlds, are fully capable of screaming out loud when they're frightened. Telepathy is a universal, intergalactic, interdimensional language and is more accurate and honest than words or vocal communication. In addition, composites of energy, personality, race are used instead of names to identify individuals. I have been telepathically known as impulsive, joyful, helper, human. This is an approximate and a rough translation into English. Really, instead of the words, what they would do is have an image of me doing something goofy, or interrupting, or leaking out my thoughts, being impulsive, being basically upbeat, because I felt great while I was aboard the big ship. And that is sort of how they would identify me instead of calling me Karen or using words to describe me. ET culture, page 70. ET culture is love-based with emphasis on compassion, empathy, mercy, and as you might have guessed, is a feeling-based community rather than a word exchange or speech-based community. There's no deception and no bullying. Unless we were playing a sport or game, there wasn't even any competition. Unlike us, they have never been programmed or brainwashed, are free from constructs, and are totally emancipated beings. Further, ET culture is not homogeneous. Just like with their appearance, there is much cultural diversity, but their culture is always very peaceful, gentle, and kind with no emotional drama. This group of beings love social interaction and are always willing to offer empathy and support. Everyone strives for improvement, and different beings within the group are at different levels of awareness and technological proficiency. So, learning and education are always interwoven within their culture. Everything we engage in aboard the big ship is based on an anodyne principle with loving intentions. Anodyne, for those who are not familiar with the term, basically means you do everything you can to reduce the harm in any situation. And they have loving intentions. No one intends to harm, frighten, or dominate. Those are imperfect human ways and not ET ways of being. Just as there is diversity as represented in their physical appearance, there is also a lot of variety in social customs, ways that ET bonds with others, and things to do for fun and entertainment. Later in this book, I will talk about how culture is also reflected in the economic system within the big ship, which is resource or trade based. But for now, I will say that culture is ever changing as we meet and interact with visitors and the occupants of other city ships. In the next chapter, next week, I'm going to talk about the big ship. They're enormous. Some of them are as big as planet Earth. Some of them are even bigger. Some are smaller. I would say the ship I was on was smaller than the planet Earth, but still pretty big. It held millions and millions of beings, very comfortably, too, I might add. Continuing, I was encouraged to find that similar to Earth customs, there are festivals and gatherings to exchange trending fashions, delicious food, and interesting news. We exchange gifts, we meet new friends, and we attend cultural events. More about this in the pages ahead. Many have similar cultures to ours here on Earth, but are much freer to express authentically and are more respectful of differences. There's no stress and no conflict. We all respect that we all have free will and free choice and refrain from judgment. So I wouldn't withhold something I wanted to say, or, well, think, emote, whatever, telepathically exchange, because I would be afraid of hurting someone's feelings. Like those kind of customs are not on the big ship. You can say how you feel. You can transmit how you feel. You're honest. You can be very honest with everybody. And instead of other beings taking offense or making assumptions about you, it's just accepted. That's how you are. That's how you're seeing it from your perspective in that moment. And so there's no judgment, and it's amazing because I'm someone who puts my foot in my mouth constantly, and it was so refreshing to be able to just express and not worry. Nobody was offended. Nobody took issue or made a story out of it. It was fantastic. So I'm looking forward to when us Earth people get to the point where we can be like that. Further, diverse sexual behaviors can also be freely learned and experienced because sexual unions are not always reserved for procreation and are considered to be just as natural as eating and sleeping. On the big ship, the environment is sex positive. There are many interracial relationships: familial, social, romantic, sexual, and reproductive. Some things are universal: the deep love we feel for a newborn baby, the inborn desire for community and celebration, and the curiosity about enjoyable sexual relationships. More about this in a later chapter. So, I do want to say some people get freaked out when they hear this. And I just want you to know it's not like the Love Boat. They're very discreet. There are some things that are universally kept fairly private, and sex is one of those things. So you may not even be aware, but eventually you learn the cues and the clues. And yeah, there's no taboos. It's not considered dirty or sinful or anything like that. It's just considered natural. When you're hungry, you eat, and when you feel sexual, you get sexual, really, basically. Finally, you might be wondering, what are their religious beliefs? Unlike Earth beings, ET subscribes to no religions or religious beliefs because they know that universal consciousness is made up of eternity and infinity, which means that their concept of the Creator is everything existing throughout all of time, space, and dimensions, and this all, with a capital A, is conscious and imbued with creative power. As I understand it, what we think of as Holy Spirit or grace forms all temporal and spatial spaces and things through the divine feminine, which is the creative force, and the divine masculine, which provides the structure. ET then celebrates these basic concepts culturally and through their very state of being and life choices. They do not worship, they live fully and authentically. So you might consider their lives, how they live. That is their worship. So instead of going to a church and doing a worship once a week, their whole lives reflect their spiritual understanding of reality. Let's see, how are we doing for time? We're almost done, so here we go. We are all one species. In our contemporary UFO and ET communities, which abound here on Earth, there's much talk about insectoids, reptilians, and avians, etc., which supposedly evolved from insects, reptiles, or dinosaurs and birds. But these thoughts are based on the theory of evolution, and I emphasize theory. The theory of evolution is very poorly supported with evidence, and there are no facts to reinforce it. Adaptations, selective or crossbreeding, mental and physical development, yes, but evolution, as theorized here on Earth, no. In my adventures with ET, I learned that the universal understanding is that all intelligent life is formed from a creation perspective. The advanced technology on the big ship reveals that our species was originally created with the fusing of specific genes and the removal of certain redundancies. This created a robust root race that diversified over time and continues to do so over the eons. Here on Earth, some people believe that humans were created by ET visitors, and there are ancient cuneiform tablets that suggest this. These sky people could have been very advanced and may have had the desire to exploit humans, much the same way as the white and olive-skinned colonizers here on Earth discriminated against the indigenous populations of the West. I am sure that there have been advanced races of beings that came to our Earth in the past, but they did not create us. The best they could have done is tinker with our DNA but we were already here. And although not as developed as the intruders, we may have been much more exceptional than what we now think. The point is that ET visitors may have fiddled with our genetics to affect our intelligence, capabilities, and lifespan, but humans were already created and were well advanced as the Earth has been reseeded many times over. Further, humanoids and humans did not evolve from monkeys, but were created and imbued with the spark of the divine. We are all one species with different sub-root races and family lines. Yes, adaptation and cross-procreation produces some specific talents and physical qualities, but we truly are one big, beautiful family. Um, I just wanted to, oh, hi, Leah. Sorry, I didn't see you. Nice to see you. Um, if any of you have any questions, please post them in the live chat. I'd love to answer them, and I'll stop and check every few paragraphs. And if you have any comments, please do feel free to express yourselves. This is a safe space, as I call it. Further, most of the resident beings were born on the big ship and lived their whole lives aboard this mega city. Guests like me used the big ship and the company of these beings to participate in exopolitical ambassador work, education, training, intergalactic pre-settlement opportunities, etc. ET residents also participate in ongoing scientific research and serve as hosts and educators, tutors, engineers, and social support workers. Um, Leah asks, oh, yes, please can you see or hear our guides or star family? Um, I'm not sure exactly. I don't I don't think I can. I just want to be honest. It's not that I can't, it's that I get communication from all kinds of beings from all different dimensions. If you go back and read in the beginning of my book with my paranormal life, I talk quite a bit about all the different kinds of beings and the different ways that I've maintained contact throughout my life. And I don't know if those beings are personal, like whether they're part of my personal um, group of beings that watch over me and communicate with me, or whether or not we all share the same group. Like, I'm not really sure, but I do believe that we each have a soul team. So I don't know if I can hear communication from your soul team. I'm not really sure. It's not that clearly defined for me. Leah also says, I am drawn to the avians. Do you have any interactions with them? No, I have had no interactions with them. I'm pretty open about it. I have not had contact with reptilians or Pleiadians or avians. My contact is transdimensional, and it's in a place where many worlds and different dimensional realities overlap. And but I'm not really familiar with the groups that visit Earth or communicate with a lot of other Earth people. And I'm not going to make stuff up. I'm just going to speak my own truth and tell you what's real for me, and let you know. So I'm sorry. I wish I could. I wish I could, but no, I can't. So that's all I have to say. But I know that you can, and it takes a bit of practice. And in chapter 9 of this book, I teach people how to do that. You can also try Dr. Stephen Greer's CE5 methods for communicating. That I believe is very effective as well and is not that far different from what I use. So I'm just going to finish up the end of the chapter on page 74. After visiting the big ship for a few weeks or more, I returned to Earth each morning only to find that many of my memories about my off-world experiences were mostly hidden from me. Eventually, I discovered that this selective amnesia was made possible with my full cooperation and was not done by some kind of psychic rape. There are special elder beings who can facilitate the memory suppression within us through a process similar to hypnosis, and we choose to forget for a reason. Detailed memories can interfere with our reintegration back into everyday life here on Earth, so memory suppression is for our own protection. Spontaneous memories will emerge when the time is right, although some humans have had a natural release of memory from a triggering event. I was able to retain some of my memories initially, then many more were released with the kind assistance of my friend Bob the Gray. Over time, I'm able to remember even more detail, but I do not remember everything. So, yeah, Bob the Gray, that's my only contact with some being that I would consider to be a gray. And of course, I talk more about Bob at the beginning of this book and in my new book. I'm doing the best I can to reveal as much of my experience as possible, and you will learn much more about the ET beings that I met and interacted with, and more about the big ship in the following chapters of this book. I'll just show you an image. And again, if you come to the Quantum Guide show on Wednesday, I'll show you full color images of many of the beings that I met aboard the big ship. But you can see here, it's not so easy to tell the male from the female. And this is what I call the twins. They've got this bright red spiky hair, and they're ever so loving. So and by the way, I just want you to know these are not snapshots that I personally took. These are AI generated images. So I worked with AI to describe my contact and the beings, and AI generated the images. And they're not identical, they're not exact replicas, but they're pretty close. So I thought that was really cool. So again, everybody, I've just published Transdimensional #2, Meet the Greys picture book. The first 2 chapters are print. Let me get myself open here to the print. And I have all kinds of experiences from other experiencers, Preston Dennett, Dolly Safran, Nancy Thames, the Kinsella twins, and Jimmy Blanchett. And then I get into over 250 beautiful images. This book is actually in color. This is a proof. And I had to actually publish it in black and white because to publish it in color would have been over $30. And I was able to keep the price down to $18.99 American USD. And these are images of grays. So it's not like they have a lot of color to them anyway. But I'm going to be showing some images of them. Leah says, thank you, Karen. Have a peaceful evening. Gorgeous book. Thank you. Thank you so much. So now for something a little different, a friend of mine is doing a fundraiser. He's a musician. Well, he does a lot of things. I've had him on the Quantum Guide show a number of times. Gary May. His channel is called Camp G May. And so I have a trailer for a festival that he has coming up February the 8th. It's absolutely free. It's an online festival. It starts at 4:20 on a Saturday afternoon. And I'm just going to quickly play the trailer. You folks might be interested. And if so, please do join Camp G May any Saturday night, but especially on February the 8th.
What's up? It's G-May, baby, and I'm going to be hosting Kurt Fest. Now we're looking for some more talent to come jam with me and my friends. And here they are.
Coming February 8th at 4:20 Pacific. It's Kurt Fest 25. all songs. Mr. Smith. Adam Cohen. April Dawn. Wall Street BH. Valerie Rod. Leia Dale. Layla Verse. Kurt Best 25. Special guests. Axe and Nacho. Smoke and Bluesa. Al Sanchez. Emperism. The Maestro. Liz Day. Jade Star. And with special co-hosts, Lori's Mishmash. Richie Design, Natasha, Chris Wayne Sr., Layla Verse, and Kurt Best headliner is Violet Femme.
So, as you saw by the end of the video, this is actually a fundraiser. It's a free event. It's a free event, but they will be accepting donations. Kurt, he died tragically in a house fire. He was a disabled gentleman, and he died in a house fire, leaving his widow. She lost everything: her husband, her pets, and all her possessions gone. And so they will be accepting donations, and that's in honor of Kurt. They called it Kurt Fest. But if you want to join, like I said, it's absolutely free. I think you'd really, really enjoy the concert and the talents out of this world. So I highly recommend it to everybody. So that's it for Aliens and Angels. Oh yes, also it's Camp GMA. I actually need to put the link in the description. I'll do that so that you can find it. And that's it for Aliens and Angels. Next week, we'll be talking about the big ship from my book, Transdimensional, Meet the New Neighbors. I want to thank everybody for joining us, whether you're here in the live chat, watching the replay, or listening on an audio platform. I appreciate each and every one of you very, very much. And I wish you the best. And we'll see you Wednesday for the Quantum Guide Show and the slideshow, or we'll see you next week for more Aliens and Angels. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you for joining me for the Aliens and Angels podcast. Read about my true life ET contact in my book called Transdimensional, Meet the New Neighbors, which is now available on Amazon worldwide. Subscribe to my YouTube, Rumble, and X channels at Karen Holton TV. The like button and leave me a comment, and please do share this podcast with your friends. Check out my website at www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com to see my free resources and amazing products and services. All of the links will be in the description below. As part of the Forbidden Knowledge Network, you'll also find the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton on all audio platforms. Until next time, keep up the good work.